All right, this is Module 2, Part 2, and today we are going over the sales conversation. This is the actual stuff that's going to be inside your sales conversations with prospective clients, and these are some of the tips, tricks, and tactics that I use personally to command higher fees and to make the client work in a mutually beneficial way with me rather than an adversarial way that most freelancers go through. We're going to be covering some highly valuable stuff. So the first thing that I want you to do is make sure that you have a pen and a piece of paper and that you are actively taking notes. This is going to be one of those videos where you are going to pause it, you're going to write it down. And what I've done with this PowerPoint is only put the headlines of what I'm going to discuss so that you have to listen and you have to write down what I say as I say it. That way it's not just rote copy. You have to listen to it, and then you have to process it and analyze it and write it in your notes. So this will be an active module and not a passive module. You might have to go through it a few times to catch everything, or pause and go back and forth to make sure you catch it all. So without further ado, make sure you're ready for this module. We're going to be moving pretty quick, and if you have any questions on the content, bring them to the Q&A calls because I can answer specifics about anything that you want to go over. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the concept of OMV, or objectives, metrics, and values. These are the three principles that you want to carry into the sales conversation when you're talking with clients. The first thing we're talking about is objectives. Objectives are specific goals, and the specific goals have expectations that actually accomplish those goals. Now, let me explain the specific goals part. Objectives, when you're looking at specific goals, you're asking the client, what specifically do you want this project to do? Because you want to get from them not just what they originally think, which is, oh, I need a sales letter, or oh, I need an email sequence, or oh, I need a landing page, or I need a couple headlines written. Whatever they think they need is as a result of their own problem solving for the problem that they have. You, as the copywriter and the consultant for the marketing side of their business, you have a job and an obligation to figure out what their problem is and whether or not they're actually making the right decision to solve that problem completely and get them a great result. So when you're doing that, the first thing you do is talk about it is the objectives for the project, which is what the client's specific goals are and figuring out why they have those goals in the first place. But talking about the specific goals and then also setting up expectations that will actually accomplish the goals that they have. For example, if the client wants to sell their product and they want you to write a sales letter in order to sell that product, well, their goal is to sell their product. Their goal is not for you to write a sales letter. That's their perceived solution to the problem that they have and to the goal that they have. So when you hear, okay, you want me to write a sales letter because you want to sell this product. Well, what kind of product is it? Well, actually, it's a consulting product. And the consulting offer is going to be for a very few number of people, and we're going to market it on Facebook specifically. And they're like, oh, okay. So your job as the copywriter is to understand what they're talking about with their goal. And you say, well, a sales letter is probably not the best medium to use when you're trying to sell consulting. The reason being, a sales letter isn't the easiest way to build interest and trust from a cold traffic audience coming from Facebook. And because of that, what you're probably going to need is a video sales letter. Or you could use a live webinar or an automated webinar sequence. And so what we're looking at here with that is not only do you need the video sales letter or potentially the live webinar, which would require copy and slides and design, but you're also going to need email sequences before and after the specific sales piece. You're going to need advertising that congruently ties in with the emails, the landing pages, and the actual piece of the sales copy. And then you're going to need the right types of landing pages and registration pages for optimum conversion. And you're also going to need to know what all the numbers are. We'll talk about metrics in a second. But you understand when you look at what the client's goals are, when you're measuring based on objectives, which are specific goals, then you immediately start to realize what the true scope of the project is. And that will allow you as the copywriter and consultant to get more work out of the client, but also get a more effective and beneficial result for the client. And that's the end game. That's what we're trying to do here. You are not an order taker. You're not someone who simply, takes an order and stands behind the grill and fries up the person's burger. Your job is to be the strategic consultant in this relationship and to figure out what the best solution is for your clients. And that requires some marketing knowledge. It requires some industry knowledge, which is going to be on you as a copywriter to develop. But once you do that, you'll have the right insight into the client's business, and you can help them really flesh out the specific goals that they need for their objectives and what the expectations are to actually accomplish those goals. That's the first one, objectives. Let's move on to metrics. Metrics are measurable, real-time, objective data. Let's go through that. Measurable, meaning they have a specific way to measure what is going on. The clicks on the ad, the views on the video, how long they watch the video for, the heat maps on the sales page to show you where people are scrolling and where people are clicking on the page, the bounce rate of your website, the load time for the web page. All of these things are extremely specific, hard data points. And that's what you want. You don't want soft data. You don't want people's opinions. You don't even want customer service tickets. You want specific, hard data that is measurable, and on top of that, you want it to be in real time, which means you want active monitoring of what's happening with your copy. You should be able to get daily, and if not daily, then certainly weekly reports on the effectiveness of your copy, whether it's the click-through rates on the ads, whether it's the conversion rate of the sales page, whether it's the split test results of your headlines, whether it's the click-throughs or open rates on your emails, whether it's the registration percentages on your landing pages or registration pages, if it's the heat maps on the sales page, if it's the there are dozens and dozens and dozens of metrics that you can measure in real time for all of your digital sales copy. If you end up doing direct mail, there are other measurable, specific things that you can look at to make sure your copy is converting. If you're in direct mail, it's sort of a different beast. Let's focus specifically on online for this module. And if you have questions about direct mail, we can answer those in the Q&A. But you're looking for metrics. You're looking for measurable, real-time, objective data. That third part is objective, meaning it's not subjective, meaning it's not up to anyone's interpretation. Somebody can look at it, maybe your client's grandma takes a look at the sales page and says that it's not any good. But that is not an objective data point. That is a subjective data point. And you should completely ignore subjective data points when you are trying to optimize your copy and when you're talking to the client about optimizing your copy before you even start. The client needs to know that you operate from data. You do not operate from opinion. It's going to position you higher as a copywriter and allow you to command higher fees, but it's also going to make your job easier because then you're not dealing with his second cousin or Uncle Billy looking at the sales letter and not liking what it says and having to answer for that. You must set the expectation early in the relationship before it ever starts and before any money exchanges hands that you are only talking about hard data points when you're looking at this type of copy and the results that it's going to create. So you're looking for measurable, real-time, objective data that shows whether or not the copy was a success or a failure. Success meaning that it ROI'd on the ad spend, it went way more than your fees, and the client is making a healthy profit that they are happy with. Failure means that it did not meet any of those things. Failure meaning that the client is unsatisfied with the actual objective results of the copy. The only way to know that is to have measurable, real-time, objective data. All right, let's move on to values. The third thing is values, because this is really what is the undercurrent, the core of why the client is doing stuff and what you need to get to in this sales conversation. So their values, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in this module, in this part, but their values are basically asking them, why does this matter? What's the bigger picture? And what is your mission? Why does this matter? You're asking them about their goals, and then you're asking, why does this matter? So if they say, my goal is to sell more product, well, why does this matter? Okay, we're selling more product because it is our main core offer and we're trying to increase sales for the year. Okay, great. What's the bigger picture? Why are you trying to increase sales? Well, we're trying to increase sales because we really want to grow the company and get this product out there because we really believe in it. Okay, you really believe in it. What is your mission? What are you trying to do with this product? Well, we think this product really saves people's lives, really helps people in a big way. And so part of our mission as a company is to grow the company so large that we can help as many people as possible with the product. Great. Talk about their values. Make this a values discussion, not a transactional discussion. As soon as you tap into their reasons why, which we'll talk about in a second, then you change the conversation from merely transactional and merely objective and data-oriented and tactical into something that truly emotionally compels them. And if you can do that, then you will transform yourself into something more than simply a copywriter, but you will also transform your client because they are not going to they're not going to think of you as a copywriter anymore. They're going to think of you as essentially a brand partner. And they're going to think of their own stuff in a much bigger way, which for a lot of business owners is a breath of fresh air because they're stuck in the weeds, they're stuck in the woods, and they are not thinking about their company from a big, broad strategic perspective most of the time. If you can bring them to that spot, they are going to be eternally grateful and they are going to reward you financially. So these are the three things you need to focus on during this entire sales conversation. Objectives, metrics, and values. The OMV model. Now let's move on to the next part. I call these the 11 authority questions. Now if you weren't taking notes in that last one, I would recommend pausing the video, going back, watching it, and taking notes on it, and writing your own opinions and your own questions and your own ideas for that last part. This part here, you are going to want to pause and rewind and write down the specific wording of these questions. So here we go, 11 authority questions. I would recommend that you ask all of these questions in every prospective sales conversation that you have with your new prospects. If you can ask all 11 of them, it puts you in a massive authority position. So let's start with this, and remember, you need to write these down exactly as they're written. So the first one is, what are your goals for this project? I'll say it again. What are your goals for this project? The second one. Who are your chief competitors? I'll say it again. Who are your chief competitors? The third one. What do you know about how they are doing? In reference to their competitors. What do you know about how they are doing? Number 4, what is the price point of your product or service? What is the price point of your product or service? Number 5, how did you come up with that price? Say again. How did you come up with that price? Number 6, would you sell it at a higher price if it would convert? That's important. Would you sell it at a higher price if it would convert? All right, number 7. How many are you currently selling per month? How many are you currently selling per month? Number 8, how many do you want to sell per month? And want is emphasized. How many do you want to sell per month? And for this one, caveat, guys, before we move on to number 9, make sure that you're asking this in a realistic way. Don't let them cop out on the answer to this question. If you're saying, how many do you want to sell a month? And they respond with, well, as many as we can. That's not the right answer. And you need to bring them back. And you say, okay, that's cute, but really, how many do you want to sell per month? And if you want to, get in detail and say, and follow up the question with, how many of these can you handle selling per month before it stresses your system? How many can you handle selling per month before it stresses your system? Now, that is not number 9. That's an extra question to number 8 that you can ask if they start to get cheeky and won't answer the question. So number 9, what are your 30, 60, 90, and 365 day goals? I'll say again, what are your 30, 60, 90, and 365 day goals? Put another way, which you don't have to ask it in specifically this tone or with this wording. What are your goals for this month, for the next 2 months, for the next quarter, and for the next year? That's what you're asking them. You want them to think near term, and you want them to think far out, because you are now a brand partner. You are not simply a transactional person who's writing for one project. All right, number 10. Where are you getting the traffic from? Where are you getting the traffic from? Get detail here. You want detail. You don't want them to just say Facebook. You say, okay, are you driving cold traffic with ads? Are you using video ads? Are you using regular ads? Do you have an organic fan page? How many fan people do you have on there? Each one of these questions is designed to get an answer that you can dig deeper into to get more information on the client and more information for you as a copywriter to succeed. Every single one of these has that potential. So use it. Number 10, again, is where are you getting the traffic from? And finally, number 11, what can you tell me about your avatar? What can you tell me about your avatar? Avatar also is target market. It's the same thing. The ideal customer, your ideal prospect, whatever it happens to be. Avatar is a term you can use for every industry. If you're specifically targeting an industry that uses a specific term for their prospects, real estate tends to use a lot of leads, things like that. You can use that specific terminology if you want to, or you can just stick with avatar, which is pretty ubiquitous. Those are the 11 questions. Pause this, rewind it, go back, write them down if you have to. We're going to go over specifically why those questions are important and then move on to the next part. So the first question was, what are your goals for this project? That directly relates back to the OMV model. So what are your goals for this project is specifically designed to elicit their values and their objectives so that you can get some metrics on how you're going to succeed with this. What are your goals for this project? That's going to be a very big part of the conversation, and you want it to be as detailed and emotionally charged as possible. You want them to get deep into their specific goals, and not just financial goals, but like, what are the other parts of this goal? Like, do you want to hire more people? Do you want to take more vacations? Is this going to help you make payroll? I had a client once that I was writing for, and one of her main motivations was to drive sales of her product very rapidly because she was in a bit of a crisis and she needed to make payroll that next month. That is a much bigger goal, a much bigger reason why than simply wanting to pull off a really sexy big launch. And that got me the project because I asked about it, and that is specifically what she wanted to do. And I was the only one who cared enough to ask. All right, the next one is, who are your chief competitors? This is another one where they might try to cop out. And you know what kind of client you're dealing with and how sophisticated they are based on their answer to this. If you say, who are your chief competitors, and they answer, well, no one, we have no competitors, then they're lying or they don't know. Usually they don't know because they're not willing to admit that their product has competitors, even indirect but most likely they already have direct competitors, people who are buying something instead of buying their product. So if they try to cop out on this, dig deeper. Who are your chief competitors? And you say, oh, okay, well, we don't have any competitors. And you say, okay, who sells something similar to what you sell? Well, nobody sells anything similar to what we sell. It's completely unique. Okay, who is selling to your target market? Who's selling to your avatar right now? Oh, well, it's IKEA. Oh, so you sell furniture. No, we sell the most revolutionary chair that was ever created. You can't even really call it a chair. It's just so beyond what a chair is that there's no competition whatsoever. I'm like, okay, so you're selling a chair. You want to get there, you want to get deep with them because they're going to be high on themselves and their product. And by talking about their competitors, both indirect and direct, you knock them down a peg psychologically, but you also get insight into who their target market is and what the competitors are, so you can start figuring out what the market awareness and sophistication are, the way that I taught you how to do. The next question is, what do you know about how they're doing? All right, again, if they didn't cop out on the first question, then they're going to probably explain to you what this one is, or, what the answers are here. What do you know about how they are doing is how you figure out how savvy your client is. If they know about their competitors and who's launching what and when and how for how much, then it means they're keeping tabs on them, which is good for you as a copywriter because they're going to have a lot of insight into the holes in the marketing sphere. It's going to help you on your research. The next question is, what is the price point of your product or service? This is a really simple question and that they shouldn't have any trouble answering whatsoever. But it sets you up for the next two questions, which are authority building questions. The first one is, how did you come up with that price? Which immediately puts them into a defensive posture where they're basically like, oh, well, it was random, or that's what the competitors were charging, or the competitors were charging this, so we undercut them, or the competitors were charging this, but ours is better, so we marked it up. You start getting them to defend their decision on how they came up with that price, and then you ask them a completely disarming question next, which is, would you sell it at a higher price if it would convert? Almost always, that answer is yes, and you set them up for that question. Because if they can sell it at a higher price, absolutely they would sell it for that price because it would mean that they would get more revenue and potentially the same amount of clients. So there's no reason why a business would not want to charge a higher price unless they have a very specific and very reasonable, like make them explain it, reason. Most of the time they won't have that. Most of the time they will say yes. But what that does is it triggers a thought loop in their mind where they go, okay, this guy's asking if we can sell it at a higher price if it would convert. Maybe he has some ideas on how we can charge more for it and convert it. Because that means that makes him incredibly valuable versus other copywriters, because other copywriters are just taking our orders and writing. They're not concerned with our product price point, they just write their project. This guy wants to help us increase our prices. Let's keep talking with him. Think about that. The next question is, how many are you currently selling per month? This is where you're getting some data. You're going back to the OMV model and getting some metrics so you can set some standards and expectations. How many are you currently selling per month is their baseline, right? And then you can start digging into the data here. How many are you selling per month? Okay, how many clicks to your website? What kind of conversion rate is that? Is that doing decently? Start digging into the details there. And once you've got them kind of talking about the reality of their business, they realize where they're at, and they're probably unhappy with where they are at. And if they're unhappy, then that puts you in a great position to make them happy by helping them convert better. The next question is, how many do you want to sell a month? Which again is a realistic question, not as many as we can type answer. But that's the same type of question that sets you up to be seen as an authority as the would you sell it at a higher price if it would convert question. So those two questions, would you sell it at a higher price and how many do you want to sell, begins to make them think of the ideal situation with you. Subconsciously, they're already projecting success onto this relationship and you haven't even sold them on anything yet. You're just asking questions, which is a wonderful position for you as a copywriter, and it makes them feel comfortable and excited about the conversation rather than slipping back into transactional ideas. All right, the next question is, what are your 30 through 12-month goals, 30-day through 12-month goals? And start getting them to specifically talk about their goals that you talked about in the first question on a timeline. And saying, okay, in 30 days, we want to increase our sales by 10%. By the end of the next quarter, we want to be doing 25% better or driving 25% more bottom line revenue. By the end of the year, we want to double our business. You're like, great, those are good goals. Let's set those and see what that looks like in detail with metrics and scalable systems and objective data. Let's figure it out. And you talk about it like a brand partner who is there to help them. The next question is, where are you getting your traffic from? Get detail on this. Where their traffic from is very, very important. And if they do not have a steady, reliable, scalable source of traffic, that is a red flag. Because it means that your copy is not going to have a steady, scalable, or reliable source of traffic to test from. They're not going to be able to control who sees it and how many people see it. It's a red flag if they can't answer this question. If they're saying, it's SEO, or we get on average 10,000 visitors a month to our website, then you go, okay, how many of them stick around? Oh, you have an 80% bounce rate. That means you only have 2,000 people on your website every month. That's not a lot of traffic. Do you know who they are? Oh, they come from everywhere. It looks like social shares. Maybe you did a podcast with Marie Forleo. Who knows, right? Get the details here because it will reveal a lot about their business and their savvy of that business. The final question is, what can you tell me about your avatar? This is a bullshit question. Not in the sense that it's worthless, but in the sense of this is where you find out if your client knows what the hell they're talking about. Because if you ask them, what can you tell me about your avatar? And they tell you, oh, it's women aged 25 to 60. You're like, well, that just talks about 3.1 billion people on this planet. Can you please be more descriptive? If they can't describe their avatar, it's another red flag. And it's another thing that's going to make them feel a little defensive if they can't describe it, because you as the copywriter need to know who their target market is if you're writing for the client. And these are the questions that you ask in order to be perceived as a powerful consultative authority and not a fry cook who's just taking an order for a specific project. Let's move on to the 10 rules that you have to remember. But if you have to, pause this, go back, rewind, write it down, whatever you got to do. 10 rules to communicate value. So I've written down 10 rules, and these are 10 rules that you are also going to want to write down verbatim so that you understand them. And then we'll go over them after I tell them to you. The first rule is never quote a fee until you've drawn out the value of the project. Never quote a fee until you've drawn out the value of the project. Number 2, never quote on the basis of time. Never quote on the basis of time. Number 3, explain why value is the best determinant of price. Explain why value is the best determinant of price. Number 4, be prepared to show why you are different from other copywriters. Be prepared to show why you are different from other copywriters. Number 5, never give an arbitrary due date. Number 5 again, never give an arbitrary due date. Number 6, always focus on the big picture results, not the tasks. Number 6, always focus on the big picture results, not the tasks. Number 7, never accept the idea that you are constantly available. This one's important. Never accept the idea that you are constantly available. Number 8, emphasize the results, not the pieces. Emphasize the results, not the pieces. That's just like number 6, but it's important. It's slightly different. Don't accept, the next one, number 9, is don't accept spec or contingency fees. Don't accept spec or contingency fees. Now, I want you to write that down, but I also want you to put a little asterisk next to it, because we are going to go into one reason why you would accept a spec or contingency offer. There's only one. And number 10 is provide value immediately in the consultation. Provide value immediately in the consultation. Great. Those are the 10 rules, guys. Again, pause, go back, write them down if you have to, then come back to this point in the video and we will discuss why they're all important. So the first one, never quote a fee until you've drawn out the value of the project. That's an extremely important rule of thumb to remember. You are not obligated to quote a fee at any time until you feel it's appropriate to quote a fee. I'll say that again. You are never obligated to quote a fee until you feel it's appropriate to quote a fee. It's a very different mindset from someone who goes from, I charge X amount for a sales letter, I charge X amount for an email. It's a very different conversation, because if somebody's coming to you and they want a sales letter and you simply say, okay, it's $8,000, they have zero context to the value that that sales letter is going to bring to their business. Either they think, wow, that's super cheap, the last one I paid for was 50 grand, or they think, wow, that is stupid expensive, the last one I paid for was $500. It's irrelevant what they think at that point, because you've already basically said, this is what I am worth without knowing anything about you or this project. I am willing to put my worth out there without knowing a thing about you, and that is an extremely transactional state to be in. You are not going to be able to charge high fees consistently if you quote your fees immediately or you quote your fees when you're asked. So never quote a fee until you've drawn out the value of the project. Here's a couple things that are going to happen, and I'm going to tell you about them right now, and we can go into more of this in the Q&A if you need to, or talk about this, but you will encounter this. There are people who are very sensitive to this. They're like, just give me the fee, and I don't want to fuck around. Screw those clients. You don't want to work with them. And here's why. People who value copywriting know for a fact that the writer and their ability is directly related to the amount of money that they are going to make from that piece of copy. They do not think about the copy as an expense. They think about the copy as an investment to get a specific and much higher return on their money. Bad clients go into the copywriting process and go into the find a copywriter process already thinking that this is an expense that they have to deal with in order to move forward in their business. They're not thinking about results. They're not thinking about goals. They're not thinking about anything like that. All they want to hear is, how much is this going to cost me? And those are the kind of clients you do not want to work with, especially if you want to charge high fees. Now, here's the deal. 90% to 95% of the people out there looking for copy right now are the type of client who's going to only care about price. That's just the reality. Most people looking for copywriting are lazy entrepreneurs at various stages of 5, 6, and 7 figure businesses who just view copy as an expense that they have to get on with as they're taking action on their business. If you want to work with those people, then understand that that's how they operate, and understand that you will be seen as basically just a fry cook at various levels of price. If you want to charge high fees and you want people to respect your ability as a copywriter, which is what I'm assuming you're in this course for, then you never quote a fee until you've drawn out the value that that project is going to create for that client. That is how I am able to charge $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $50,000 for a copywriting package. That's how other people who aren't me can charge $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, or $150,000 just for a sales letter. That is how they do it. They communicate the value. They communicate the value after they've drawn it out of the client. So I need to harp on that. It's very specific, and it's a mindset shift as much as it is a specific rule. So you've got to get that through your head. Rewind it if you have to. The second part of that is very close to that general idea, which is never quote on the basis of time. We talked about this a little bit in the first part, but you are no longer an hourly employee and you are no longer an hourly freelancer. None of the things that you do are time-based, ever. Get it out of your head. You do not charge based on time, period. Your time is absolutely 100% invaluable. You can't put a price on it. What you can put a price on is the value of what you are creating with the client. Never quote on the basis of time. And now that you understand this and you've gotten through this mindset shift, you need to explain why the value is the best determinant to this client. There are some clients in the 95% who can be persuaded to pay high fees by going through this model and talking to them like this, because they start to realize and shift in their head, oh, this is not an expense. This is actually an investment in my future, an investment into my success. It's not an expense. And your job is to explain that. Your job is to make them understand. Now, if you only want to work with clients who already understand it, then you have to be at a certain level and you have to attract those types of clients. And they are few and far between, but they are always looking for copy. So be aware of that. There's fewer of them, but there are still plenty of opportunities to work with them. You just have to position yourself and be at a certain level in your ability to write copy. Explain why the value is the best determinant. The next part is be prepared to show why you are different from other copywriters. Notice how I phrase that. Be prepared to show why you are different. What do you notice about that? You might recall it from some of the things that I've given you in your critiques, some of the things that I say over and over and over again. And I'll give you the answer because you're not here to respond. Be prepared to show why you are different. It doesn't say be prepared to tell why you are different. You're not telling them why you're awesome. Nobody trusts anyone who's bragging about themselves. You are showing them why you are different. You're showing them why you're different through these rules, through the questions that I just gave you, the 11 authority questions that I just gave you, by your focus on the objectives, metrics, and values that are required to create a project like this, and through your mindset that we talked about in part 1. And as we move further into these parts 3, 4, and 5, you're also going to learn how to show them before they even get to talk to you. You're showing them why you are different. You're not telling them. You should never have to justify in a sales call. In fact, I actually don't like calling these sales calls at all. The only reason I use the word sales conversation is because nobody understands when I shift that wording. But I'm going to shift the wording, and I'm going to tell you what these really are. These are really client interviews. They are not sales conversations. You are interviewing your prospective client to see if they are a good fit for your copy. You are not selling them on the copy that you're writing for them. You are interviewing them to make sure they're a good client. Make that mental shift. All right, be prepared to show why you are different. The next one is never give an arbitrary due date. This one is more for your sanity, but also the client's sanity. Your job as a freelancer, your job as a copywriter is to manage expectations as much as it is to write good copy. So one of those expectations is due dates. Never give an arbitrary due date that you just come up with off the top of your head. Always give due dates based on your personal opinion on how long it's going to take and how much work it's going to take you to do it. Remember, you're not charging for time, but there are due dates with copy, and you have to understand that, and people really value your due dates. One rule of thumb that I would tell you to do once you're planning your due dates, if you think you're going to get it done in a week, tell them it will be done in 3 to 4 weeks. I would triple or quadruple the amount of time that you think it's going to take you to do this project every single time. The reason I say that is because stuff comes up, the client doesn't respond to you, maybe you're feeling lazy or you get sick. Any number of things can happen in your work, and you want to give yourself a buffer. You do not want to stress yourself out with arbitrary or hard to hit deadlines. I can tell you this from experience. I am very bad at setting deadlines that are hard to hit for me. Almost always I have to work really, really hard to hit those deadlines. I could always be better at setting easier deadlines. And I'm telling you to do it right now because I've seen what happens when you don't. So never give an arbitrary due date. Always set a due date based on when you think you can realistically deliver it, and ideally triple or quadruple the amount of time you think it'll take you. Next one, always focus on the big picture results, not the tasks. This one's a little bit strategic, so we'll go up and explain it. Always focus on the big picture results and not the tasks. So the results are what matters. You are a copywriter. You are paid to create results. You are paid to attempt in the best way that you can to create a win for your client. Now, big copywriters know that sometimes copywriters swing and miss. That's fine. Big companies know that some copywriters swing and miss. That's fine. But results should always be your main focus, not the specific tasks. So if the result is create a sales page that converts at 1% to cold traffic, 2% to cold traffic, that's the result. The tasks that are involved are like research, client interviews, draft scheduling, milestones, things like that. All of those things do not need to happen when you're doing this client interview because you're talking about big picture and you haven't even agreed to take them on as a client yet. So keep the focus on the results, not the tasks that are required to achieve those results. Those tasks come later. Next thing is never accept the idea that you are constantly available. Some clients will want constant access to you and they will want frequent access to you. Don't let them do that. One needy client can throw off your entire workflow for months. Don't do it. Basically say, if you want to contact me, the easiest way to do that is through email, and I respond to emails typically within 24 to 48 hours, but there's absolutely no guarantee because I have other clients and other obligations. If something is absolutely 100% urgent, you can schedule a call, a 15-minute call with me using a scheduling software. Never say, here's my cell phone number, call me whenever you want. Never say, here's my email, I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Never say, just ping me on Facebook and let me know what you need whenever you want to, right? Most clients will respect your time, but one needy client will throw you off completely. Never accept the idea that you're constantly available. The next one, emphasize the results, not the pieces. This is very close to number 6, emphasize the results. I mean, focus on the big picture results, obviously, but emphasize them in the context of this is what we're focused on right now in this conversation, and once you pay me money, we are going through the pieces and breaking them down specifically how we're going to achieve those goals. Your client is paying for the result. They're not paying for the tasks it takes to get there. Those things are irrelevant to the main result and irrelevant to the sales conversation. All right, next one. Don't accept spec work or contingency fees. 99.999% of the time, you should never accept spec work or contingency fee work. Simply because you're basically saying, sure, you can have a taste of this food for free, and then maybe pay me later. It doesn't work in real life. A lot of people, especially agencies, like to do this. A lot of graphic design world likes to do this. Never accept spec work or contingency fees except for one specific reason. But get it through your head. Never accept spec work or contingency fees. Now, the one reason that you want to break this rule is if you can get spec work from a extremely legit or extremely well-established business that is also an absolute dream client of yours that you would want to continue to work with over and over and over again and would love to work with them. When you offer spec work, then you're essentially selling your best work for free. You're giving it away to them. So the only reason you want to do that is if this client means everything to you. And that doesn't mean every single client that comes along. It means one or two in your entire career where you're willing to do this. So keep that in mind. That's the one reason you would break this rule. Otherwise, never accept spec or contingency fees. So the last one is provide value immediately in the consultation. This is a rule to adhere to, and if you use the questions that I asked, and if you follow the OMV model, you're already providing massive value in the consultation. Never make it a pitch fest. You are providing value. Remember, your job is to do the work and get the results that you talk about in this call, which means you can talk about everything in this call. Now, my advice to you is that you ask more questions than you do talk. Always, every single time. And remember that, it's a rule of thumb. But always convey value immediately in the first consultation. All right, if you have to go back through that, go ahead. We're going to move on to the number one rule never to break. And this is actually a very, very simple rule. I need you to write this on a sticky note or write this on a note card or write this on a piece of paper and keep it in plain view whenever you talk to a client. This is the number one rule to never break. Never quote a price just because the client asks. I'll say it again. Never quote a price just because the client asks. Write it down. Put it somewhere where you can see it. You are not obligated to quote a price to them ever. It is your work that you're selling. It's your time, your expertise, your ability that you're selling. When you sell your time and expertise, you have the pick of anyone you want to work with, and the client has the privilege of working with you if you so choose. So if they demand a price from you, and you're not ready to give them a price, then don't give it to them. You can be honest and say, I don't know enough about this project or the amount of time that I can invest in it to give you an accurate price. I will contact you after we get done this call and after I've ran some numbers and figure out if there is a price that works or let you know if I can't do the project. Do not quote a price just because the client asks. It kills your positioning. It kills your value proposition. Don't ever do it. Never quote a price just because the client asks. All right, moving on. This is where we talk about good scope creep. Now, a lot of people, if you don't know what scope creep is basically when a client starts adding things onto the original agreement and tries to get you to do them. So scope creep is typically a bad thing that a lot of freelancers talk about and don't like and hate that clients do. But here's the deal. If you frame it correctly, scope creep is awesome. And here's why. All you have to do is set the expectation that anything outside the original scope is billable and highly priced. That's all you have to do in the initial client interview. You're setting the expectation that anything outside the scope that you guys agree to in the initial agreement, which you should have agreements and contracts, anything outside of that initial scope is billable and highly priced. It's just as valuable as the rest of the stuff you do. Just because it didn't come up in this first conversation doesn't mean it's any less valuable. You're not giving them a mulligan, you're not giving them a discount, you're not giving a good client thing, anything like that. This is billable and highly priced. And once you've done that and set that expectation, go find more stuff to do. If you've already got them to sign a contract, you've already got them to sign a agreement for a specific scope of the project, and you get into the project and you realize, oh crap, we forgot to talk about emails. They need email sequences, and they need like 5 different email sequences because their customers drop off and go through different things. You come to the client and you go, look, because I'm a valued consultant and because I'm a brand partner who only wants the best for you, I think that we need to add this on to the scope of the project because otherwise it's not going to be as successful as it could be. And they go, oh, great. And you say, this is the cost. And because you've already set up your positioning as a valuable provider and you've already given them great service already, they're like, sure, bill it. That's good scope creep. That allows you to get higher fees. That is a way where you could sell a potentially slightly lower priced front end where someone just wants an advertorial written or a VSL written or a sales letter written and leverage that into a high 4-figure or 5-figure client. Because you go in and you see what they need and they like your work so far and you start looking at increasing the scope. I just did that with a client. Just did that today where the initial client agreement was for $10,000 and it included a couple different things, helping him with a sales letter, some copy editing, blah, blah, blah. But we came to agreement today that we would need to additionally bill for some more specific work on his lead magnet, because that's what needs to get done. That's good scope creep. That's increasing the price, and that's how you get higher fees. So obviously, focus on the good stuff and don't just bitch like a normal freelancer would. The last thing we're going to talk about, and this is very brief when it comes to what we're about to talk about, but we are going to talk about criteria elicitation. And basically, I call this criteria elicitation for dummies. This is the shortest, tightest explanation of criteria elicitation you are ever going to get. Criteria elicitation is basically an NLP concept where you're digging into the person's psyche and figuring out why they're doing stuff. This is an entire course to itself. I'm sure people have charged $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 or more dollars just to teach this at an NLP conference. So I'm going to give you the bare bones, specific, most detailed nugget that I can possibly give you that you can use in all of your sales conversations. And here it is. I call it the 3XY formula. This is what you do. You ask the question, what do you want to do? In reference to their goals, in reference to one of their projects, in reference to one of the things that you're talking about. What do you want to do? And then you ask the question, after they've answered that question, because it's probably going to be a short answer, what do you want to do? The next question you ask is, why is that important? Why is that important? And then you get their answer. They're going to say whatever they're going to say. Once they say that, once they give you the answer to that question, why is that important? Then you, again, ask, why is that important? And they tell you. And then they give you that second answer, and you ask the question again, why is that important? And the deeper you go until you get to a very deep, specific, emotional reason, then that is criteria elicitation. Because your client is doing stuff for what they believe is the right reason. They have a reason for doing everything in their head. But what they don't usually understand is the subconscious motivators behind their own actions. And if you can elicit that from them and help them find that, you become not just a brand partner, but now you are a guru. I've had people break down. I've had people tell me life stories. I've had people, email me afterward and say that was incredible just from asking this on our client interview because it goes that deep. So, first question, what do you want to do in reference to one of their goals or one of the projects? And then you ask, why is that important? And you dig and you dig and you dig. Here's an example. What do you want to do? Oh, well, we want to get this launch up so that we can launch our newest product. Okay, why is that important? Well, we're launching this new product because we saw that there wasn't really a good product in the market, and we figured we were well positioned to offer that product. So I think that's why it's super important. The market needs it. Like, okay, why is that important? Oh, well, the market needs it because, gosh, they just get hammered by a lot of people, and a lot of people sell stuff that they just don't need, or they're really skeptical, and I just feel like the whole market is just so jacked up and really painful for people, and I just want them to get out of that. I'm like, okay, great. Why is that important? And they say, well, gosh, that's important because that's how I feel. That's what I went through. I wasted $10,000. I wasted $100,000. I wasted 3-4 years of my life going through all this stuff because I didn't know what the right answers were, and nobody was telling me, and everybody was scamming me, and I just almost gave up. I almost went bankrupt. Like, my wife almost left me. My kids weren't seeing me. I was freaking out. I lost my hair. I gained 40 pounds. It was terrible. So if people can just learn this stuff, then they don't have to go through what I went through, and if I can teach it to them, then all the better, right? And you're like, yes, absolutely. So you're teaching this and you're launching this product because you don't want people to go through the same pain and suffering that you went through. Right? I'm like, absolutely. And that's how you dig into their values. That's how you dig into their whys. Some people are going to be defensive because when you get deep like this, they have misgivings on sharing some of this stuff because it gets that deep. Now, a lot of the time, you're not going to get a big pushback, but some clients will. Some clients won't answer. So if they're, respectfully not answering the why is that important questions, then you just go as deep as you can. But most clients are going to tell you exactly why they're doing stuff, and that for you, that's incredibly valuable. But also, it turns you from less of a brand partner and more into a guru at that point. So this is the last key piece of the sales conversation. This is the end of part 2 for module 2. And in the next part, we are going to go over some cool tactics on objection handling and things that come up when you're dealing with sales conversations that are going a good way, but there's still some questions to be answered. Objections, questions, misgivings, action, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about that in the next part. And then we're going to also talk about what happens before the sales conversation. And then we're going to talk about what happens after the sales conversation. So that's what's coming up in the next few parts. Hopefully this was good for you. Again, go back, take notes. I did this for a specific reason so that you're paying attention, you're listening to me talk, but you're also writing things down and taking notes actively and not just copying everything. So go through it again if you missed some parts, and let me know in the Q&As if you have any questions. And other than that, have an awesome day, and I will see you in part 3.